Welcome to Secrets from the Scene, a show for local musicians who want to improve their music, grow their audience, and learn about Minnesota's music scene. If you're interested in talking about all things music related and meeting interesting people from our local community, you're in the right place. Welcome to Secrets from the Scene. Today's episode, we've got Chris Koza. I'm really excited to pick Chris's brain about being a full-time singer-songwriter. He's been doing this for a long time successfully, and I think there's going to be a lot we can learn from him. So I'm going to dive into his bio here, and we'll get started. Chris is a composer and performer based in Denver, Colorado, and Minneapolis, Minnesota. Both solo and with his band, Rogue Valley, he has supported and shared the stage with artists such as Brandi Carlile, Gordon Lightfoot, Ingrid Michaelson, the Jayhawks, Nico Case, Kathleen Edwards, Dan Wilson, and Stephen Kellogg, among others. His music appears regularly on ABC's General Hospital, 60 Minutes, and Good Morning America, and his song Be Wild was featured in a State of Minnesota tourism campaign. In 2021, Chris recorded a version of Willie Nelson's classic On the Road Again for a Winnebago campaign benefiting national parks. His song with Rogue Valley, The Wolves and the Ravens, was featured in Ben Stiller's film, The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. Chris often performs solo with an acoustic guitar, but also performs as a duo, trio, and 4 or 5-piece band. In his writing, Chris both honors and builds on the vast genre of Americana music. For every song that sounds like it could be strummed from a boxcar clacking slowly across a grassy Midwestern plain, there's a tune sailing from a city rooftop, echoing across a valley of streets and traffic, or a melody twisting and shimmering like a dim frequency deep into the starry night. Solo, with Rogue Valley and his moniker Nobody Kid, Chris has self-produced, written, and released 16 albums and EPs. And just in this year, Rogue Valley has released their 6th album, Shell Game, and Chris is working on a compilation of B-sides and rediscovered sessions called Graveyard Shift, of songs and sparks spanning the last 20 years. There's a lot to cover, and I'm excited to get into it.
The future fragments. If it could break in reverse, reload what's waiting for us. You don't have to say anything.
Yeah, that's a real mouthful, but you sound, I want to know who that guy is. It sounds all right.
Yeah, man, I've always been impressed by your music. I don't remember the first time I would have seen you live, but it was probably early 2010s, maybe, somewhere in there. And always been a great musician, great songwriter. So it's cool to have you here, and I appreciate you making time to do this.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me, Stephen.
I think a great place to start is give people, your own version of this background. Like, maybe actually let's start with current events.
Okay.
Because you just released an album.
Yeah, that's right.
So talk us through that. Let people know what's been going on and what you're up to.
Yeah, so my band Rogue Valley put out our 6th album, Shell Game. It's a double album because if you're going to make one, you might as well make 2. And I really like making music with that band because they're friends I've had for a long time. I appreciate their unique musicianship that they add to the music. But I also like to write in the voice of Rogue Valley. It's a little bit different than my solo stuff. Some years I'll wear the hat of Rogue Valley more, and some years I'll wear the hat of myself more. It's hard to wear them both at the same time. But that's what's going on now is Rogue Valley just put out that album, so we're playing a handful of shows around and have our sights set on the spring, hopefully get out a little bit, do some short runs around the Midwest, maybe get out to Colorado. Try to force people to listen to and enjoy this music.
It's a good way of looking at it. How do you split time between Colorado and here?
For a couple of years, I was basically still in Minnesota, but I would go out to Denver for about half the time. My partner has a job out there, and it's a really cool opportunity for her. So we decided we would figure out how to make it work. Just recently, it's become more of a flip where I'm there a lot more, and then I come out, once a month for some shows or rehearsals or to meet people and, check in with the scene and the community and see what's going on. I wouldn't say it's the best way to do it, to try to be a presence in 2 places, but I love Minnesota, and I've been here in the Twin Cities for such a long time and had so many great opportunities around the state that I'm not easily going to just let those relationships and network die on the vine.
Yeah. Did you grow up here?
I grew up in Portland, Oregon. I came out to Minnesota by way of St. Olaf College.
Okay.
That place gets its hook in a lot of people.
Yeah, yeah.
Are you at Ole?
No, I went to Hamlin.
Okay.
So not far removed, but I've had some clients as well from St. Olaf.
Yeah, I mean, such a good school and a lot of talented musicians that come from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So you came for college and just ended up staying?
Ended up staying. I had ambitions to get out to the East Coast, and a couple of times I tried that out for extended periods of time, but it just seemed like the resources and the cost of living and the opportunity here in the Twin Cities was just something that I needed at that time. I wasn't ready to live in New York City and like be a musician. Like, come on, I barely know any chords. Like, what am I going to do? And so having spent some time out there, I'm like, man, this energy, it's really attractive. It seems addictive. Like there is a current of something special happening out here in New York, but it's happening around me, and I feel like I still need to do a lot of work within me and my abilities. And so I just ended up making awesome friends and bandmates in the Twin Cities and really making it my home for such a long time.
When you got started, did you start as solo Chris Koza career, or did you start as being in a band?
I started in a band at St. Olaf College. Some of the people I still play with today, we were all in a band together called Catnapping with a K. So we were super serious. Had awesome t-shirts. In hindsight, sometimes you wonder if you should share that kind of stuff with people, but it's all, hey, you can't be sour on your own journey. So we managed to keep it off the internet so far. So I don't know. Hopefully it stays that way. But I had those musicians that I met there, and then we kind of continued forth in different iterations in the Twin Cities after graduating. And then there just came to be a point where I felt like I wasn't really making the music that reflected my voice. I don't mean that as my sing voice. I just mean like the voice of me as a singer-songwriter, as an artist. And so I kind of just taught myself how to use Logic and bought a Motu from somebody used, and had like 3 microphones, and over the course of a year, tracked my first album. And man, it was awesome. It was awesome just to be in the thick of it, like that, in this realm of discovery. And you listen to music so many times when you're in the studio working on it, you don't even hear it the same way.
Oh yeah.
It's kind of awesome, like for yourself, but if anyone is in the room with you, they're like, "What are you listening to?" So it can be a bit of a mind game. That's when I knew that I wanted to do music as my career. Was when I spent my time working on that album and writing songs that were different than what I had been doing with the band, and learning about my voice and learning about my strengths and my weaknesses and the kinds of steps that I could take to address both of those.
I know that you do music full time now, but
yeah.
How did you make the transition into doing that through this journey of putting out records? Like what threshold happened?
I tried to lift off a couple times in that regard too, just like I tried to be out in New York, and knew that wasn't going to be my path then, and it hasn't been. I would work service jobs, work at a restaurant, work at a coffee shop or something, and would book gigs. And then sometimes I'd look at the calendar and I'm like, okay, I want to book like a 5-week tour with my band, and we aren't going to make any money, but I can't ask for 5 weeks off from this job. So I'd kind of like have these big tours or something that I'd want to do, and then I'd go to my job, be like, hey, I got all this stuff I want to do. Like I can be like on call or something, and they get it, they got it. And I was so lucky to work at a lot of places that were very supportive of me trying to do this. And so that's when it happened. I mean, the first time was probably 2007, and immediately I was like, I didn't know I could actually reach my credit limit on my credit cards. Like I should probably go back to work. And then 2009, I had some opportunities with another artist to do some touring, and same kind of thing. But then in 2011, that fall was when I really stepped out and was like, I'm just gonna give this a go. This is my next chance to try to do just music. And I had a friend who helped me to identify some opportunities that I might be able to pursue through the Minnesota State Arts Board. And these were like arts learning grants, arts initiative grants, arts on tour grants. And basically it's funding for artists and musicians, artists of any discipline, to propose a project or to work in classroom, traditional or non-traditional classroom environments, or to travel the state and bring art to other communities. And so once I was able to start working on that kind of opened up some like solid anchor opportunities every year where I could say, okay, well, I got these like 7 gigs that should help keep me alive here. And then I just need to fill my time. Most importantly, I need to like be a songwriter. I need to be in the studio. I need to work on tracks. I need to work on ideas, because if I'm just like waiting around for this gig, drinking beer and playing basketball the rest of the time, I'm not planting any seeds that are going to grow into anything sustainable. So yeah, 2011, I was able to go on the road with my friend Stephen Kellogg, who's a successful touring musician. He's on tour right now with a dude from OAR. He's great, and he's made a real cool DIY career of this whole thing. That idea of DIY, it's kind of false. Like, you do a lot yourself, but you need people. You need opportunities. You need breaks. They don't happen if you're just sitting around. I believe you have to get out in the world. You have to like meet people. You have to shoot somebody a message. Stephen, thanks for shooting me a message to invite me to come to your awesome studio, Helvig Productions. It's a gorgeous space, man.
I appreciate that.
So congrats. I've always recorded in like bedrooms and basements and my personal studios. And, I have a place like this. I guess it's just another place to go and make yourself have to do the work.
Yeah.
But it's a really beautiful place to do that.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate to have found this space for sure.
It's cool. And I can just feel like a lot of people do a lot of cool work in here.
Yeah.
So, in 2011, I went on tour with Stephen, and then the next year did South by Southwest with my band. And also around this time, my band Rogue Valley put out 4 albums in 1 year, and that was a really huge undertaking.
That's insane.
Yeah, 4 full-length albums, all like fully produced, and it was an effort.
Why?
Well, I felt like everybody was just putting out the album and then doing the shows around it for 18 months to 2 years and then doing it again. And I understand that. I was doing that too. And I'm like, no, let's just bombard with content. Let's do a concept. I wanted to write like a screenplay or a novel or something, but I didn't, and nor do I have now the skills to really pull that off in a way that I think is worth anybody's time. And I was like, I just want to tell this prose, poetic life story kind of thing through music, through these, essentially prog folk songs. And once the band was on board, whether they, ever really were or not, it was like, well, we're just going to do this. We got to finish it. And so that was a lot of time. I was able to start being a full-time musician because I didn't give myself enough time to do other things. I kept myself busy with projects and performances, like going to shows and trying to meet people. I mean, it wasn't lucrative by any means, but it felt like the beginning of something sustainable.
Yeah. Okay. You mentioned, going out and networking, and obviously the opportunity to go on tour with Stephen Kellogg, for instance. Like, how did you meet him?
I met him because a friend of mine who knew my music gave it to somebody in his band, and they were playing it in the tour van, and he liked it. I was like, well, any opportunities that I'm going to have, it's going to be because the music I'm working on is reaching somebody.
Yeah.
Physically and emotionally. No amount of like elbow rubbing. That's a thing. That's what you call?
Yeah, I think that's...
Rubbing elbows? That sounds better. Maybe we should just cut that part out.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, no amount of networking is it'll get you to the meeting, but what do you have to show? So for me, I think the way that my music has gotten out there and provide opportunities for me was, for some reason, there's just certain people where it's struck a nerve with, and I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah, I think that it's a little bit of a tangent, but I feel like it's a conversation that has come up a few times with other clients too, where, sometimes we can really start talking about social media strategy and promotion strategy and all this stuff. And it's all important. Mm-hmm. It's all a piece of it. But at the end of the day, if the music doesn't resonate with people and truly hit a chord, strike a chord, you can push it all you want, but it's just not going to do well. Mm-hmm. And there's a balance there. There's definitely a balance there. It's hard to know, but most people probably don't do enough on the promotion side in terms of
I definitely do not. I need to do more. But.
So, I think we can keep beating that drum of, just, hey, keep working at promotion. But at the same time, you do have to be getting that feedback. You hear that, oh, so-and-so heard this and shared it, and now it's leading to something else. That's a good sign to keep going. Mm-hmm. Right. And I imagine that was a really important moment in 2011. That was like, okay, keep going.
I was like, I have a chance to be direct support for this artist in 14 cities around the Midwest. This is pretty amazing. I've never had something like this before. It truly felt special. And, the first time you play at the coffee shop, you're like, this is awesome. The first time you play at 7th Street Entry or whatever, you're like, oh, this is awesome. And so I feel so lucky I've been able to have those experiences. But, even just to do this short run with Stephen, and it was awesome.
How do you feel those kind of tours? You've supported a lot of pretty big artists over time. What's the aftermath of that? What's the impact? Do you see immediately an uptick in terms of interest, or is it sort of more of a slow burn?
The aftermath of any of those things has not been what I thought it would be going into it. The best part about the Stephen Kellogg thing is we're still buds now. I'll see him when he comes through town, if we're in the same town, no matter what it is. And he'll have me open his shows when he's through, if it works out. And it's really, he's so generous with his time and his knowledge. I feel like I can have access to him. And that's amazing. So I think
Yeah.
that's been super helpful with like Gordon Lightfoot. Their management was like, we'd love for you to do some more shows in the spring if we do book shows in the spring. And of course, unfortunately he passed this year, I think in February.
Okay.
And truthfully, when we were doing that run last summer, I was like, man, he is working hard. He's like summoning every last bit of energy he has, and he's giving everything back to his fans who have waited so long to see him. Like, I'm just going to enjoy this. And what I've learned that I think is commonplace of all the support gigs that I've done is you can't let your desire for the moment to lead to something ruin the moment itself. Because if you aren't there in the room with the people, like this is just a day with people in a room. These are your coworkers and collaborators and colleagues. And if you're constantly in a room like, oh, we should do this later. We should, when it's such a one-sided thing in terms of opportunity being given, I just think it falls a little bit flat. And you really don't know when you're going to get back to some of these places again, if ever. And so it's really important to, when you're in an amazing situation that you've worked hard to get to, or, it's a combination of working hard and luck bestowed upon people, you just got to like embrace that. I think that's the biggest, the idea of success, like that's a success that is sustainable, is like appreciating the moment that you're in.
Sure. On that topic then, how has that changed for you over the years, or has it always sort of been the same goal along the way, or have you seen it shift as I just did this and now there wasn't as much of an effect from it as you were hoping, or something like that? And it just, how has that changed over the years?
At the beginning, you think that once you are like the fog light, the front of that engine chugging through the forest, that everybody's going to see it and they're going to come out of their houses and be like, oh, yay, the Koza train is coming through our village. There's so much going on at such high levels. That has not been an effective way for me to approach how I try to get out there. Things have evolved. Like when I did the tour with Ingrid Michaelson, I was like, man, this is the beginning of an opportunity to be touring with all these national artists. And then at the end, it was like, did I do something wrong? Like I'm not getting any returns on my emails. I'm not like, it seems like everything was good. And you just don't know. You don't know. It doesn't mean you did anything wrong. It just means like you did the job that you're supposed to do, and people move on to other things. So that's why enjoying the moment and embracing that and making the most of that moment is so important. Of course, like having these opportunities to do these tours and and when songs are in shows or something, it's an opportunity for people to find your music and find your story. So the one thing that I try to do now is like update my bios from more frequently, because sometimes you do a show and you're like, oh man, that bio is really outdated. That is embarrassing.
Sure.
Yeah, so when that tour got done, I was like, man, that was incredible to be in front of all these people, all these venues. I think the music is a good match, and hopefully it's the beginning of a longer relationship, or maybe working with other artists that are kind of on the same level. But it just was kind of the end of that. And it was really tough to quantify at first, but nobody owes anybody anything. You do the job that you're asked, do a good job, and I think that's, at the end of the day, the best that you can do. And it's usually not about you if something isn't going the way that you want.
Well, and I'm sure you still had a noticeable, uptick in interest of like fans and followers and that sort of thing.
It was incredible to play for these audiences, and people are like, oh, usually your openers aren't very good. You're so awesome. I'm like, well, and I don't want to throw shade at anybody else, but thanks for saying that.
Yeah. On the topic of playing live, do you just take it sort of as it comes, or do you have sort of a strategy of how much you want to be playing live?
That's a good question. I think early on I was just so hungry to say yes to everything, and I still have that mentality, even though I, for various reasons need to be just more curatorial about some of the opportunities that I'm a part of. I like the idea of having a really clear strategy. I suppose my strategy now is to do some cool shows in the Twin Cities and kind of around the Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin region, maybe a dozen things like that a year, and then try to connect with people that are out in the world a little bit more. You need a strong, supportive local scene, but it is hard to, I think, just be sustained on a local scene, financially and ambition-wise. Some people definitely can do it, but there's a reason why there's bands tour all over the place.
Yeah, I'm sure you've done a fair amount of DIY touring. And
yeah.
When you go out as Chris Koza, do you always switch up who's playing with you in terms of the band, or do you always have like the same members that support Chris Koza?
It's usually the same members.
Okay.
I've had stretches here and there where it's been, some violinist or something like as a duo, and that's been fun. But I kind of gravitate back towards some of my main people. We're all just loyal to each other, I think. That's an awesome thing. Sometimes it can be kind of limiting, which is why after we did the Rogue Valley stuff in 2010 and 2011, I wanted to make a solo album, but just do it differently with different people
Yeah.
in different studios and different musicians. Because I was like, I love all these people and we'd make good work, but I don't know enough people.
Yeah.
So I need to get into a room with some strangers that I have mutual respect for.
Yeah. The breadth of experience just
Yeah.
leads to new creative paths too.
Yeah.
We were having a conversation sort of about that on another episode with two songwriters from the scene,
Okay.
Leslie Rich and Annie Enneking from Annie and the Bang Bang.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And just that how switching up how you make the music can just really change the outcome of the music.
Yeah.
And I think it's smart. Yeah. And instead of, I mean, sometimes there's temptation, right? If something was successful to just repeat it again.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with
and,
that.
And that might be the best decision too. It just
Yeah.
depends on where you're at. But when you're playing live, this question sort of pivots off of the live thing. And it came to mind because I was checking out your bio and that kind of
Yeah.
thing for the episode. And I was noticing the stuff that you were selling on your website. And, you sell the traditional CD, vinyl,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. But then some non-traditional merchandise too, like handwritten lyrics
Oh,
and
yeah.
some songwriting like sessions, essentially
Yeah.
like that. How big is merchandise for you in terms of its financial impact on your career? How seriously do you take the selling of merchandise?
Well, I love having it. It's really fun to make. For me, it's the final step in finishing an album is now I have a CD or now I have a record of it. So what? Maybe I have some boxes in my garage. Like if you make stuff, that will happen. But I'm not like hanging up the towel. Like I'm getting out there and playing. And there's this, maybe it's a gambler's mentality or something, but I feel like, I'm just going to keep pushing. And then you meet people who like something about the moment that you had together, like, I love that guy's music.
Yeah.
Or that person was cool. I want to know more about their story and maybe I'll learn more through this music. We don't make a lot of money on it. Like the margins aren't crazy and it's a lot of work and you got to front it all up front. But I feel like it's so fun to build an aesthetic world around the music because people engage with the music, but really they engage with so much more. They want more to go from, not just a song. They want pictures, they want a story, they want video, they want shirts, hats. I mean, maybe they do. I'm just saying this because maybe it's just the story I told myself. But I like when I think about my favorite bands in high school, and now I'm like looking at, for some on eBay, and I'm like, oh man, that shirt, that Smashing Pumpkins shirt from that like 2000 concert tour, like that would be kind of cool to have again.
Yeah.
I mean, it's...
I agree with you. I don't think it necessarily even matters what you sell.
Yeah.
I don't. There's been current, I guess, headlines sort of going around that, 50% of people that buy vinyl don't own a record player.
Dude, so many people that buy a record from me, they're like, this is going to get me to buy a record player. I'm like, okay, I'll see you next year, and you still won't have one.
But I think it goes to your point that people just want an aesthetic. They want a keepsake. And I tell my clients a lot of times when they're debating whether or not to invest in something like that I'm like, it's really not about whether or not they're going to listen to it. It's that they want to support. They had a great time at your concert. They want to give you money. And it's less awkward if you give them something in return versus them just handing you cash. I'm like, see you later.
like a cold cash handshake.
Yeah,
It's
a little weird.
Weird.
Whereas if they get a keepsake out of it, and particularly if it's a nice, beautiful vinyl that they might put on a shelf and pull out again and remember, oh, that was a really fun time, a really great concert, or a record that I love to listen to. Why not? Yeah. I do think it's important. I was just kind of curious if it was a more than the keepsake thing, if it's like, that's a substantial amount of income that's important.
Yeah, it's meaningful. It helps to fund making more music and making different kinds of merch. I think what you said about it's not like important what you sell. I think it's important to not sell something that you think people are just going to buy this. Like make the thing that you would want to buy. Make the thing, if it's not like a CD or a vinyl or a shirt or something, like whatever tchotchke that you would want from a band. Like, I think that it can be really fun. It doesn't have to be stressful.
How many people take you up on the songwriting stuff?
When I post about it and push it a little bit, I'll get some people that will do a lesson or they'll do or a session, I should say. When I push it, I'll get some people that do a session or a pack of like 3 or 4 sessions. But right now it's just maybe a couple people a year. Or if somebody just asks me, sends me a direct message or something. And it's something that I like to do, but I'm not trying to just do that all the time.
Yeah, sure.
It's fun for me to be in that role of helping to guide somebody to their goals of songwriting.
Yeah. Do you produce as well?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, with your albums, have you generally produced all of those in the past, or is that a mixed bag of different collaborations?
So typically I've worked with engineers to record, basic tracks. And then early on, I worked with mixers who really had a heavy and awesome hand in mixing the albums. But then over time of being in the room and becoming more capable and comfortable with software and with editing and tracking, I like to just handle as much as I can. And then it's easy to get sick of your own work if you've just spent so much time on it.
Yep.
So generally for the final step, I'll hand it off to somebody else to do the mix, but then I'll like have feedback on that.
Of course.
And I think that is it's a good way to work.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Handling as much of the process or an end project on your own is just also helpful for the budget, right?
Yeah, it's helpful for budget, but sometimes you can spend a lot of time.
Yeah, it's true. Having at least one other person along the way is helpful.
Yeah, you need a guide when you're lost in the weeds, for sure.
Sometimes there's that like creative endeavor where you just need to go down the path on your own and find the way. But other times it's like, and then you get stuck and send it off to somebody else and feel the relief of somebody telling you that it's time to work on something new.
And, I try to like mix prep all the sessions, have it all edited, have everything labeled. Of course, people, engineers will prepare the session and import it however they need to, how they're used to working. But then I'll get something back. I'm like, oh, I guess I wasn't like so far away from where I was hoping to get to, but I still need somebody that I trust who has a different set of ears and skills to see stuff in these recordings that I'm blind to now.
And like you said earlier too, it's just about being fresh, because the longer you listen to it, the more you don't hear it the same way. That's just a byproduct of working on the whole thing. You're going to listen to it a million times to get to the end. And when you're there, you're just fundamentally hearing it different than somebody that's going to hear it for the first time. It's not the same. And it's weird to think about listening in that way. And I try to explain that to clients sometimes of like, yeah, but the way you listen isn't the way other people listen. And it can't be. You can't get back to that anymore.
No.
It's gone. And so that's the importance of having that, a mastering engineer, a mixing engineer, somebody that can give it a fresh listen. But you have to trust them. You have to trust their opinion and make sure that you're not sabotaging it too.
Yeah, you can just easily undo hours and hours of work.
Yeah.
One thing I've also done is I don't listen to references more than a couple of times through the mixing process, because I know how it goes. Like, I feel like what I'm going for at that point is like, how is it hitting me right now? If I am driving the car, listen to it, at the gym, listening to it, all these places to go for a walk, listening to it, it's like, I'm just saturating myself. I'm not gaining the true benefit of using a mix engineer. I'm still dwelling in the process.
Oh, you mean references of like earlier
like mixed references.
Oh, okay, yeah. A couple of years ago, I started doing this. I don't release any version of the song until the end.
Okay.
0 early mixes.
Oh, to your clients.
Yeah.
Okay.
I won't. And there will be some pushback sometimes on that. Now, if it's something that we're kind of writing from the start, like we just came up with something that's sort of brand new and they need to work to it, I will give a really simple demo version out to them.
Yeah.
But make it sound not anything like it's going to sound at the end, like really undersell it. But the whole purpose is that I try to prevent people from listening to their own stuff too much. And so by doing that, when I just give them, hey, here's draft 1 of the first mix, for one, it's a way better experience for them.
Yeah.
It's way more exciting. But 2, when they hear it, their first impressions are really, really accurate. Yeah. I can do a mix, not worry about having it perfect. Do draft 1, but get it really close in terms of like where I think it's heading. Yeah. And then the feedback they give me will be so much more accurate. I don't have to sit there and question it. I don't have to worry about it. I can just take it kind of like gospel. Like they think this is too loud, and I can go because they're hearing it for the first time. It's so crystal clear when you hear it for the very first time of what should be up, what should be down, what feels off. It's made the whole mixing process go better. I think it makes the mixes better. Yeah. Everybody's role is more helpful, but you got to restrain the temptation of wanting to hear it when it's like close. It's really been a great thing. And I would recommend that to anybody, especially if you are self-recording, that when you're done working on something for the day, don't listen to it. Don't take a bounce. Don't do any of that. Just wait. And the next time you're back in there, and hopefully it's a few days later or a week later, you pull up that session and just listen through once. And then just take note of how it hits you as a listener, like it's not your song. And then make your changes and move on. Just keep going.
That's great practice.
It saves a lot of time for one thing, but I do think the results are better. There are some times that you need to like dig in and really listen and figure it out. And sure, do that. But then if you've done that, stop and take a long break from it, because those breaks are crucial in terms of your perspective as a listener. And listening is an art too. The way that you listen the best, I think, is when you haven't heard something before. And so if that's not the case, then you actually have to really work at it to try to listen to something accurately, for lack of a better word.
Yeah. That's definitely a thing that's evolved through doing so many albums, through 16 albums, is like the way to approach the various steps. And this Rogue Valley album, I started writing songs for that in 2018. I did a bunch of demos, and then we did the drums in 2019, and then the pandemic happened, and I kind of just like, everybody did satellite recording of their parts, and I got all the stuff, and I was just spending so much time editing and trying to make it sound like it wasn't a hodgepodge of recording sources. Thankfully, everyone was, capable of doing it well. And by the end of 2020, I was like, man, I cannot spend any more time with this material right now. It just feels like I don't know what it is. I don't know what it needs. I don't know what I want it to be. I didn't do really anything on it for a year after that. I just kind of let it sit and simmer. My friend Kevin Bowe, who has worked with a lot of people, he does mixes, and I hadn't worked with him before, but I had met him back at IPR, and that was a place, and he had brought me in to do some chats with students and some guest lectures. And I'm like, I kind of like his mixes. I need someone to help me finish the end of this. And that was like probably one of the first times where I wasn't listening to stuff so much. I mean, it's definitely like diminished over the years with every project, but this one I was like, look, I know these recordings so well. I cannot just sit here and listen to it 8 times in a row and feel like I can give any meaningful sort of feedback.
Yeah. So if you feel like you're in that rut and you just feel lost, that's a really good sign that you just reach out to somebody else, a professional.
Yeah, reach out.
That's what they're there for. And if you can't, if it's just a budget limitation or whatever, then, give yourself a nice long break.
Yeah.
Let it simmer, like you
Stephen,
said.
way to wrap up something constructive from that that duel or that diatribe that we were having about listening.
Cool. Well, let's move on to another topic, because another thing I've wanted to pick your brain about is the sync and licensing stuff. And you've had some seriously big placements.
Yeah, I've had some fun ones.
Yeah. What's your favorite placement that you've had so far?
Well, of course, the Secret Life of Walter Mitty. There's a song called "The Wolves and Ravens" that showed up in that film, and I wish I could give any kind of like awesome story about how it happened. Like a carrier pigeon delivered Ben Stiller a Teddy Ruxpin, and that song was playing on it. I don't know how it happened. It was just a search, and they found it, and he loved it and wanted to make that a major part of the film. And the thing that placement did for me and for our band was it's allowed our music to kind of stay in people's minds. People find it because they watch Secret Life of Walter Mitty on an airplane on a family trip, and then they investigate and they find the song, and then they make a comment on YouTube. It's so rewarding when even just like a handful of people, a smattering from across the globe, which is no small deal, are like, hey, I wish you could come play our wedding in Australia next summer, but we'll just use a recording as we walk down the aisle. I'm like, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Like to have your music be a part of other people's art, let alone their life, is a pretty special thing. So that has been definitely my favorite and the biggest one in terms of just like visibility.
So talk to me about your background in sync. How involved are you in it? How much do you pursue and write for it? Yeah, walk us through it.
So there's a few different companies that I'll work with from time to time to do library tracks, but there's one company that handles my catalog, and I've worked with them for a dozen years. They have some good relationships, so while I'm always like, why isn't there more stuff happening? Because you always think that every music supervisor is just dying to hear your song and put it in that scene. It would be perfect. But, they got a pretty big stack to go through. It just helps that I've worked with this company for so long, and they know my music really well, so they're able to pitch it for the right kind of opportunities.
Do you want to say what company this is?
Yeah, they're called In the Groove Music.
Oh, yeah, local.
Yeah, local company. In the Groove is the company that I've worked with for a long time, and they've been good to me. And then I've also done some stuff with Black Label Catalog and Grey Ghost.
Yeah. The majority of the TV placements are all the local companies then doing that for you?
Yeah, In the Groove handles all of that stuff, like manages my catalog. So they have a lot of relationships where it's less of a sync and it's more of just a use. Yep. They have these blanket arrangements with certain production companies. And so, honestly, you don't know when your music is being used in something.
Yeah.
And once in a while, I'll get a text message from somebody. They're like, oh, I think your song is going to be in the show. We just saw it on a cue sheet. I'm like, they didn't even know.
Yeah.
So if you're sitting around waiting for the phone to ring or waiting for that check in the mail, it's going to drive you freaking crazy.
Yeah.
Because that's just not really how it's worked for me.
Well, let's get into that a little bit. When you say represents your catalog, I assume the stuff that you're putting out as Chris Koza and Rogue Valley and Nobody Kid. How much, though, outside of those groups are you writing specifically for sync?
I'll do a few like compilation tracks for In the Groove every year, maybe like half a dozen. Mm-hmm. Like we want some Western songs or Americana songs or this like modern take on old hymns kind of vibe. So I'll do that. And that's kind of more of it's a work for hire in some ways, but I'll still have writers credits on it.
Yep.
Or I'll collaborate with their composers down there on something, just because their composers make so much stuff. But as you know, like, you collaborate, you put yourself in a new position. You like the alchemy of just being in the room with someone. You might create something exciting in a way that you wouldn't have otherwise. And so sometimes some of those things end up getting picked up because they have just like direct channels of who they're trying to service with that kind of music.
Yeah. When you're writing, do you have an intention set out of what you're going to write for? Or do you just sort of write and then go, hey, this would be a good Chris Koza track, or this would be a good Rogue Valley track, or this would be a good Sync track? Do you let it fall into the buckets naturally and just write whatever you think is best? Or do you sort of set out with a target in mind?
Well, I don't know about a target in mind, but I kind of get a sense of when I'm sitting down to sketch. Actually, I don't care where it's going. Like, on the times where I sit down to sketch, I want the mood to be a certain way. I want to feel a certain way. I want to have like a freedom of time and just be limited by, ideas. Experiment chord progressions and melodies, not really any lyrics. But I really like writing from the, like, I don't know, the nebula or something. And then over the next, several weeks, I'll go back to some of these sketch sessions. I'll pluck things out and then I'll create songs out of that. And that's when I really have a sense of like, does this one feel like it could be a Rogue Valley song? Does this one feel like it could be a Chris Koza song? Truthfully, with the Rogue Valley stuff, I've often just written like 5 or 6 songs in a sequence that I would want to hear as a flow on an album. So I'll just like, I want a song, I want it to start like this. I want the next movement to be like this. I want the next movement to be like this. Then I'll like dig in a little bit more with the kinds of themes and arrangements that I want to have on there. But the Rogue Valley one is definitely more like, I want it to be this contained concept of like recurring conversations between the music.
Do other members in Rogue Valley also contribute to writing?
I mean, there's some songs where there's more opportunity to add unique parts, and then there's some songs where I've really like written out or demoed every instrument.
Sure.
But I am like always so grateful to have the input of those musicians, whatever they want to add. Like, I always want to hear what that is, even if I do want to, be really close to my initial idea with it.
The arrangement of a song is so important
Yeah.
in terms of how it's going to impact the listener. I was asking because I was just kind of curious how much collaboration you do in terms of, is it mostly on your own, or do you reach out to a lot of songwriters to work on other projects?
I don't reach out nearly enough to people to work with them. It's something that I've always liked to do more of. My friend Justin Lansing, who's in a group called the Okie Dokie Brothers, he and I have been sketching out some ideas. And I think like writing, in some ways is like dating. Like, you can respect someone the way they look and find so many things attractive, but maybe you just don't like vibe in a collaborative way, but it's still worth trying.
Yeah.
Like and so that's my goal, I'd say, over the next 12 months, is to really try to reach out and collaborate more. I mean, I don't desire so strongly to do it, but I know just how valuable and beneficial it is creatively.
Sure.
To do it. And if I'm advocating for other people to do it, I need to do it.
Yeah. I am a strong believer in all things collaboration, whether it's songwriting collaboration or song arranging collaboration, production collaboration, all of it. There's just a lot to learn from other people, even if it's something that's like, I do not like how they do that. And, but just being exposed to more ways of thinking is really helpful.
Yeah, more ways of thinking. And like, the DIY mythos is like, I did it all myself. But no, like we were just talking about, like, you don't do it all yourself. You need people, you need community, you need a network, and you got to get into the room with some people.
Well, I think that mentality of that you need a network, you need a community, probably, and correct me if I'm wrong, has got to be a huge part of your longevity, because you've been doing this for so long successfully at a professional level. Is that true? Is that accurate? Or do you think there's other big factors that play into you still at this?
No, I think I'm very lucky to work with people that want to support the stuff that I do, and I try to give opportunities as much as take advantage of opportunities. There's no way that I could keep doing this if I didn't have people that wanted to help support this mission of mine, of being a musician. Yeah,
I mean, it seems obvious and everything, but I think especially today, there's just a lot of people sitting in their bedroom doing it by themselves. And there's more solo artists over bands, I feel like, more than ever. Part of that's just how the tech in the world has changed, that it's so easy to do that. Whereas there was a day not that long ago where if you wanted to make music, you were going to have to find everybody to make music. You couldn't generate the other parts in a computer. And, while there's so much to be gained from where we're at now, I'm not saying I would want to go back by any means, but I just think there's so much more to music than doing it by yourself. If that makes your creative process better, like if you just like pursuing it on your own, fine, but still find someone along the way, because it likely will lead to better results, or at least longevity. I think that's my opinion on it. I don't know.
I think that's a great insight.
What are you working on now? In the bio, it mentioned you've gone through this graveyard shift.
Oh, yeah, sure. So, you know, like when you're working on music over the years, there's just songs you get tired of, or you don't want to finish, or you don't know how to finish. And so there's definitely some over the years where I like that song, it just didn't fit in the context of the album, because I still like putting out albums versus only singles. Yep. And that's solely my choice of doing it that way. I don't think it's it's right or wrong for somebody to just do singles. It's whatever, that's how you want to do it. But I like to write like a batch of songs at once, and so they seem like they're all siblings in the same minivan headed down the highway to grandma's house together.
Sure.
And so I got a bunch of sessions from over the years, and I've just been going back in and sort of after finishing the Rogue Valley album, I feel like I just need a bit of a palate cleanser creatively. I just want to go in and not try to start over from the beginning right now, but I still want to work on stuff, and I want to like practice and learn things about my craft and my skills. So I'm just working on a group of songs, plucking them out of the recycling bin and stuff.
So I'm curious about that process. Out of the songs that you write, or let's say ideas generated, I don't know, it's probably a gray area, but how many make it, meaning you play it live, you record it, versus get tossed to the side into the scraps pile?
Well, at this point, like I've written so many songs, I kind of just like, I'll let some go early on in the process of like, I'm talking about like sketch sessions that I do.
Yep.
In 3 hours, I'll have like 20, just like little ideas, and I'll go back and maybe take 10 of those, and maybe 5 of those or 8 of those will become a song I work on, and 5 of those will become a song that I finish. And generally, if I'm getting it to that like finish point, I'd say it's like 85% likely I'm going to release it and put it out. I don't have a lot of stuff that's like completely finished, that it's just hanging out on a hard drive.
Okay. If it gets finished, it's going out. Otherwise, you kind of know it's just going to stay as that original idea and not get developed. That makes sense. So this project is kind of going back through those ideas and seeing which ones should have been pushed further along.
Because sometimes like you're writing this song, it's just like you didn't know how to finish solving the puzzle of it at the time. And then now I'm like, oh, this is kind of what I want to do. And it also helps me to maybe think less about the songwriting of this recording and think more about like, well, what kind of production aesthetic can I evolve for myself? Like I've done Americana stuff for a long time, acoustic guitar. I had this album under this moniker Nobody Kid, and that was like music that I just created all on like MIDI programming.
Yeah.
And like played it through soft synths and also analog synths. And it was really fun to hear a song that I would write and could kind of produce in any way, but just hear it with this futuristic kind of future retro sort of electronica pop thing. And so that's what I'm doing with this with batch of songs. I'm not making like electronica pop with it. I'm just like, well, does it need to have like 19 layers of production? Can it be stripped down more? Or can I do something weird like track my vocal 10 times on it just to create this like sensation of breathiness that I am usually not doing on my music, and then like keep the rest of it, the production super sparse. And so I'm kind of taking it as an exercise to not just like revisit these songs in terms of what they are or could be, but like how can I make them feel fresh?
And sort of experiment with your production. That's cool. Do you have a timeline of when you're thinking that one's going to be?
I'd love to start putting that stuff out at in March or something. But
okay,
we'll see.
It's not too far away.
It's not too far. A few long Minnesota wintry weeks, and you can get a lot done.
Yeah. Well, I feel like the only question that I didn't dive into much that I would regret if I didn't at least pick your brain a little bit on is sort of the business, the promotion side of things, like what's your philosophy behind that? Broadly speaking, I'll kind of let you dive into it first, but how do you push your music?
Well, I've had some times where I've been very good at showing up for social media, where I like make a spreadsheet like of all the different sites and the kind of posts I want to make, and then I'm like, and how often I want to make them. I've done that and I've followed it for like 5 or 6 months, and I'm like, it feels doable. It feels like I can like access a meaningful community online and meet new people and meet potential collaborators or bands I want to work with. Inevitably, I just reach a burnout point of it. It doesn't have to mean like I get so stressed out and I walk away. I just like have a few days where I miss it, like going to the gym. I'm like, well, that was a golden era of showing up for that. I have a complicated relationship with, for me, like a social media presence. Sometimes I just don't care about it as much as I probably should for some of the goals that I have of reaching people with my music. And I know the kinds of steps that I can take to get back to a place where it's just like has to be fun. It has to be of you. You have to like contribute in a way that's meaningful. Like I don't mind like watching other people's pithy videos and like laughing at them, but I can't put that up for myself for some reason. I was like, that's just not like the me that I want to have up there. So promotion is very difficult. Like you have to tell people about the stuff that you're doing. You know, a lot of artists are self-conscious about, you know, tooting their own horn. And I'm no different than that. So I usually try to save it up around a few shows that I really hope that people will come to, like a release show or maybe playing at a venue for the first time. That I can do because it's more of just like a one-off little project. One thing that I do on occasion is I'll do like some, you know, Facebook ads or, you know, I try to do this like Spotify marquee. Like I'll try some of these ad things and try to gauge if it makes any difference, if people seem to be finding the music because of that, or if more people sign up for my email list or something.
Do you have an active email list?
I do. Yeah, I do send out an email. I'd say like 10 months out of the year, I'll send one out. And so I think that's pretty good. Sometimes it's all 12, but I usually miss a month here or there. But I find that is the thing that I love putting together and making it really comprehensive, and I can have all the details in it. I want to make sure all the links work. I have like the new merch up on there. I care about doing that because if somebody's going to take the time to like read your email in their inbox, like it can't be more than like 90 seconds long, and even that might be long, but I want to like, you know, have some respect for the people that signed up for that thing.
Yeah.
I like the email list.
Well, I think that actually raises kind of an important point, which is you have to find what you like to do. And it seems so easy, but it is not. Yeah. It's very not. An email list is, I think, one of your more effective marketing strategies in general, to be honest. I have emails that I need to start using mine more often because I think it's a lot more effective than social media for a lot of people. Because you're going direct to people. You can guarantee delivery. You can't guarantee they're going to open it, but you can guarantee delivery. And if you are offering something valuable, whether it's entertaining or informative or whatever, you know, it's easy to get people to buy in and build trust and stay top of mind with people that you exist and you're still doing your thing and releasing your 16th album, you know? So yeah, if the email list feels natural, you pursue that and just make something really good. And on social media, it's the same thing. I've heard this story time and time again. I've experienced it. I'm still figuring out what I want to do with it too, where you get into this flow of like a system. Okay, I know I can do this. And you come up with all these ideas and you follow it and then you just stop at some point. I kind of feel like it's partially because it's just another job and you realize you're not being paid for this job very well and you quit. And the only trick I can imagine would work, I think that this is true from watching the people that do stay with it and create good content, is you end up finding something that you like to create and then you can stick with it. That this sort of content is either fun to make, it's easy to make, it's rewarding to make. It's got all of those things so that it's not just, oh, let me get on that spreadsheet again, you know. Don't get me wrong. I imagine anything that takes that much effort is still going to have days where it feels like, I don't want to do this. But
I mean, people work hard on making posts and doing social media stuff. It's inspiring and daunting.
Yes. But if you can find something that feels authentic to you, whatever that content might be, and stick with it, you'll find an audience for it. Because I think one of the biggest hurdles is just consistency.
It's true. It's a recipe for like sustainability in anything. It's just you be consistent, you show up, and then you'll find out how it's going to go.
Yeah. And you'll pivot along the way. But if you can pick something that starts by like, this feels like something I can sustain, then do it. Even if you feel like, well, who's going to like this or whatever. I think it's actually more important that you do something that you like, that you can sustain.
Absolutely.
Don't worry about how well it does necessarily, but get into the act of doing it first. Then you can look at the results and go, well, what if I do this little tweak? Maybe if I change this, it'll be a little bit more effective. Because obviously it's not just about making content. You need people to watch it and to read it or whatever the content is. Instead of trying to first come up with the perfect idea, I'm like, oh, this is going to work. Just start by what is something that you would want to do every day? And
that's a good.
If you can find that, it's still a hard thing to do, but if you can find that, then you're on your way to a more likely sustainable situation.
Such a smart way to approach it.
I know that's something that I'm actively trying to do and trying to figure out. I mean, I think this podcast is really going to be one of those first things that I'm like, I might actually enjoy doing that, and it's content, but it'll be fun at the same time. So I think that's a big piece of it. Think about what's actually going to enjoy. There's some quote that's like, whoever's having the most fun wins. I kind of think that there's a lot of truth to it. I don't know who said it. I'll look it up. But
Today you said it. Today you reminded us all of that age-old wisdom.
That's right. Well, listen, I appreciate your time. This has been fun to hear about your career and all the different facets of it, your mindset through all of these different things. With that being said, having reflected on a lot of this, what do you think has been the most important thing that you've learned over the years that you want to pass along to people? And obviously there's more than one thing, but something that you want to share that maybe has been on your mind lately that feels like this is an important ingredient for success to keep doing this.
In thinking that somebody might find your song and establish an emotional connection with it and come to love it, and somebody might make a real long drive in the rain to come and watch you perform, and thinking that maybe the venue isn't up to your standards and the sound isn't good and you feel like shit. I really believe that you have to show up. If you're going to be out there in public, you're going to be out doing stuff, you got to show up with some kindness, you got to show up with some grace, whether you're dealing with fans, supporters, you're dealing with venues, dealing with bookers. Everyone's just a person at the end of the day. Everyone's trying to get by. Everyone's helping to support this hyper object of the arts and culture economy.
Yeah.
And I think that you just have to try to not be an a-hole and, accept the love that people are trying to give you. I mean, not in a weird way or an uncomfortable way, but if somebody's like, that music, it really reached me in a time when nothing could reach me. Take a minute and really hear what that person is saying. I guess it comes back to be in the moment of the people that you're with who are trying to be a part of you're all trying to be a part of this moment together. I just don't think you can go wrong as often as you can have that presence of mind.
Thanks. I think that's great advice. Well, if people want to connect with you and find your music, where should they go?
Well, you can go to social media. I may or may not be there, but go to my website. You can get, as Stephen was saying, all the goodies on there.
Sign up for the email list.
Sign up for the email list. Yeah, once a month. I'm definitely not going to be burning up your inbox, but I'm consistent with that, and I feel good about it. And then, of course, local record stores. Electric Fetus has stuff. Cheapo has stuff. Spotify. It's all out there. You can find it, but definitely, hit me up on Instagram or Facebook or whatever if you want to chat about stuff or you want to share music, or who knows, maybe this will be an impetus for collaboration.
At the very least, check out the music, check out a live show. Thanks so much for being here.
Stephen, thank you so much, man. This has been amazing. So I appreciate you inviting me down to Helvig Productions and sharing your time and vision with me. Thank you.
No, it's been my pleasure. And for everyone who's listening, thanks for sticking around. If you liked this episode, please send me an email at steven@secretsfromthescene.com. I want your feedback. I want to know what you like, what you don't like, if you have ideas for guests or other topics, just anything. It's still new and kind of finding our way. So any feedback's really, really, really helpful. And of course, if you like it, the biggest thank you could give me is to like, share, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. So till next time, thanks.